Uh, a very good afternoon, everyone. This talk is about securing third-party applications at scale. Before I get started, some of the key takeaways. We'll be covering some topics on how to build an effective third-party application process, especially if you are a fast-growing, small or medium-scale company. This is very helpful. Or if you have a company which has a well-established third-party process, you could compare yours to what we have for Salesforce. And then we'll be touching in parallels with our security review process for Salesforce App Exchange. And then I'd be going over some importance of storing all the review data and what we have figured out inside Salesforce, how we make use of the data. And then some of the existing open source tools that's available in the market to help you get kickstarted with the process. So who are we? I'm Prashanth Kannan. I work with the Salesforce product security team. I'm security engineer for Salesforce Health and Financial Cloud. I report to Ryan Flood here. That's my tagline. I'm a Quarian by choice and an Aquarian by birth. I know it sounds funky. I spend a lot of time reading on a website called Quora. That's Quarian.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan Flood. I lead security for the App Exchange team. Frankly, while I like the technical work and the actual finding bugs, fixing bugs, we're going to be talking a lot about process today, which actually, if you don't get the process right, the technical stuff goes to waste. So I feel like we should actually have 2 more pictures on here. If you didn't get a chance to see the lightning talk from Slack, that was an awesome talk. You should go home, watch that on YouTube. They do it in a very short amount of time. They cover a lot of the stuff we're going to be covering today. We're going to go in depth and expand on them. But tell me what the App Exchange is, Prashanth.
Yeah, of course. So the Salesforce App Exchange was started in the year 2005. So it's a portal where any developer around the world can write app and sell it to existing Salesforce customers. It's similar to Play Store in Android or App Store in Apple. We have our own proprietary language, Apex, Visual Force, and then Lightning, where people can write code in that language and they can integrate to their third-party endpoint, or you have complete third-party web application stack, which they build an integration to Salesforce. We have different types of application. We have almost 5,000 plus application. Every application that's in the market went through a manual security review. There are some apps which are simple web application, some complex mobile application. There are also apps, interesting apps which connect to printers. Now, regarding third-party application, there are different types. I mean, you have internal enterprise-related third-party application needs, like you have a HR department who want to use a third-party application to store employee information, or you have your supply chain team having vendor-related information, and then or you could have your product development team, your developers using third-party libraries in your product development, or in case of Salesforce App Exchange, where we have a third-party developer developing apps and selling to your customers. So there are a couple of challenges with it, because it's going to be someone else's code which you totally don't have access to, and then testing is a very huge challenge. Sometimes they might give you a production environment and then you might break stuff. So that's a huge challenge. And then you can only test their product. You cannot evaluate their process. Usually some companies don't have a proper secure development lifecycle with them. So usually security is an afterthought in certain companies. And then you would find more security vulnerabilities likely. And then you would also have pressure from internal and external sources. I know everyone here will agree with that. Your internal developer saying, when you're going to approve the library, or you have your external sales team who's trying to push their application to you. And then there's always be an environment that you can never control. For example, you would have reviewed a web application on one particular version, but a month later they would build more features, and then it becomes more challenging, and through that some vulnerability might be introduced too. Now I'll hand it over to Ryan to go over.
Yeah, so I live in San Francisco, and one thing you learn about San Francisco is that it's extremely expensive, and you're constantly looking for a better deal. And frankly, I was apartment hunting recently, and it's actually pretty similar to what we do. When you're looking at buying a house or looking at an apartment, you get the finished product. You get to look at the door, you check the locks work, you know that you're on a busy street. You might not know that there's a bus route that runs there literally all night, and you're going to be woken up at 1 a.m. You only get to see it in its best light. This is a pretty hard problem, and so you have to come up with ways to look at it not only its best light, but as it's being used. So we've built a pretty high-level process here for what we do. And a lot of it actually starts with defining the problem. We can do a lot of security work, and we can just solve a bunch of small security things. Knock these bugs out of here, knock these bugs out of here. But unless you have an end goal in mind and what's in and out of scope, a lot of your work's going to go to waste. Once you have that, you need to start baselining, grabbing all of the documents, getting all of the environments together, deciding what's this tall to ride to even start participating in the security process and working with your security team. You don't really get any real security, though, until you do the assessment. You might get buy-in from the teams. You might get them starting to push it together. But at some point, you need to actually knock down risk with an assessment and, of course, remediation. Hopefully, you don't do this too much because everyone has built secure products. But I think we all know we're going to do a few rounds of that. There's a hidden step here that I don't put up there because I'm a security engineer. I'm a security team, which right here is a launch, actually, where your part as a security team is done. But you need to monitor that ongoing. They're selling, they are onboarded to your internal employees, whichever process you're working with for your third parties. You need to make sure that you're actually watching what they're doing, understanding how the environment changes around you, and use that to redefine your problem. We're going to go into how we do that. And then, of course, I went to the dentist 6 months ago. It's about time for another checkup. Security's never done, as we all know. Sometimes it's time to really dig back into what we've done before. But what have we done, and what are we trying to do? When we define the problem, we have to define what's in and out of scope. At Salesforce, we defined the App Exchange. This is code that you can install into your org, integrations that can play with your Salesforce data. There is things that are out of scope. We care about mash distribution. If you are building an app for your 2 Salesforce orgs, if you're building an app for your East Coast and your West Coast accounts, and you just want to install that between the 2, it doesn't make sense for us to get in the way of that. You're building it yourself. You know your needs best. We're not going to stop that. But once you know who your audience is, define their space they play in. What are the actual data they need access to? And if you can you technically control that? Can you build it into your APIs? Can you build it into your network accesses for what data is protected and how? I always prefer policy controls, or excuse me, technical controls over policy controls. It's very hard to circumvent technical controls. And if that does happen, that's usually a form of insider threat. So you might have a bigger problem. But at Salesforce, we've defined the mass distribution as what we care about most. And we have built our technical controls into our languages and API. We have our own programming languages, Apex, Visualforce, Lightning Web Components. These have the bounds on the data built in. There's still ways that you can abuse your privilege if you are in those languages, but you can't break out of the sandbox that we've put you in. But we also want to make sure that we're open and transparent with our customers for what is and what is not a part of this process. So we have an install warning for apps which we haven't reviewed. We don't want to give the customer any idea that we've done any diligence on their behalf. They need to do it themselves. But in order for us to start onboarding and start having the ability to remove that warning, we need to baseline. We need to get people ready for our own process. And you need to think about what you want to collect. Do you want to collect certs? I know at Slack, the Slack talk, they asked if certs were relevant. I want to ask that question again. Do we think certs are security? This is interactive, people. Raise your hand. No? Yes? Certs aren't nothing. I think certs show an organizational commitment to security. You paid this much for it. Someone cares about security in some sense. I don't trust them by themselves, though. And as you go through an ongoing life cycle, you need to come up with vulnerability disclosure guidelines, remediation SLAs, and figure out what's your risk tolerance for an ongoing partnership of security, not just a one-time relation or one-time interaction. Once you have defined this process and defined this bar, tattoo it on your forehead. You want to make sure it's as easy as possible to understand. At Salesforce, we put our requirements checklist out very publicly. We want everyone to know what it takes to work with us. It saves me a lot of communication time. It saves Prashanth a lot of communication time. And we actually have taken it directly to our customers, too. So we have a gamified learning platform at Salesforce called Trailhead, where you learn a lot about what Salesforce is, how to use the product. We put our security content right into there. So people can stumble across it accidentally. They don't have to go looking for security content. Security content comes to them. We have a walkthrough wizard. When as you're submitting for the business process, we've injected it into there. We also bring security content to our customers and co-resident with our docs. Has anyone here been to Dreamforce before? Very large conference. Has anyone here suffered in the San Francisco traffic because of Dreamforce? Well, I'm a part of that, and I was teaching security there, so thank me, I think. We bring it everywhere our customers are. But here's the fun part. Here's where we get to do the hacking. Here's where we get to actually fix stuff when we assess the individuals. You can do it yourself. You can outsource it. If you outsource it, I'd recommend at least reviewing that yourself. But you need to define your security bar, which we've done, and you need to measure against it. But I don't want to be responsible for all security all the time. We've built some self-service tools at Salesforce for you to come scan your code. We have a pretty public relationship with Checkmarks, who's also a sponsor of this. Take your vendors who you work with very well. Take your favorite open source projects and put those out as things you trust. Put those out as tools they can use. And one thing that we've been learning more and more is security terms of service or contract terms. As you have the ongoing life cycle, you need to hold people accountable for security. You need to say, we've found this bug in it. You're not responding to us. This is what's going to happen to you. And we do that. We do a very proactive security posture for the App Exchange. We have our relationship with Checkmarks to provide static analysis. We've put security pretty much in every step of the partner development process. And remediation, of course. Hopefully, you get to skip this step. If not, we learn a lot about a company and their commitment to security through their remediation process. Whether it's how well they fix bugs, what questions they ask, what do I need to do to pass is not a great question. How does this bug work is a better question. How they fix bugs, we've seen lots of people try and fix cross-site scripting by just removing the script tag. You're working on it, and it's good to see forward movement. We actually get to treat that as a learning opportunity and teach them the broader scope and advertise some tools. We have some open source tools for preventing cross-site scripting. So look up secure filters if you have the chance. But we do a lot of this through our support. So we have office hours. We have more gamified learning content for technical content. I was actually told this is some of the best but hardest training on our gamified learning platform, which is great to hear. Also terrible to hear because it means we're not doing a good job teaching security. But when we do run apps through this remediation process, we return something like this. We return a detailed report leaning on industry best practice documents. Thank you so much, OWASP, for all the documentation you have. We do specific examples where we show the code snippets, we talk about what happened. And one thing that you might find out as you go through a few remediation loops is you might have people who try and brute force the process. We've built some disincentives into our process around longer waiting times, around changing our relationship with these partners, if they aren't participating in good faith with us. And I would highly recommend for your relationship, for your target audience, figure out what's important to them and make sure that that's tied to the status of their security. But we're done. We've fixed all the issues. We're good. It's time to just watch the ecosystem, see what grows, see what happens. One thing that I've learned is that it's very hard to keep track of data. Data breaches, obviously, but it's very easy just to lose data. So take inventory of your third parties based on the thing that the business cares about most. Whether it's the listing, whether it's the contracts, whether it's the privileged tokens that are not going to get lost, because if they get lost, that business falls apart. Use that as your primary key to index all of your security information off of. Review information, how much things have changed, what automated tools you can get out. But not only the security information, but general business information. Are they only selling to our highly regulated customers, or are only our salespeople using this product? How many and what amount of data is going to this? Anything you can collect, do collect. And actually, feed that back to your problem. At Salesforce, we've built a really strong, powerful programming language called Apex. In the interest of flexibility, we allowed that to run as admin. One thing we noticed is that developers weren't doing that automatically. They built their code, but they didn't always consider security. Through internal data on how many vulnerabilities we've prevented through our AppExchange process, as well as some pressure from outside, we've actually built CRUD and FLS enforcement into the product. We've guided the product decisions based on the marketplace response. This is a huge win for us. This is a great way to show need for security features instead of just secure features. If anyone knows about this, I'd love to talk about it. Currently, the enforced CRUD and FLS and Apex is in developer beta, but it's some really cool stuff. Lastly, security's never done. We all know that. I didn't brush my teeth and have perfect teeth. You need to build cutoff bars or risk-based re-reviews to figure out when it's time to do another checkup, whether it's a certain amount of time, a certain dollar impact to your business, or just a certain amount of risk change, whether it's code, whether it's API shape. Checkups are really great in driving down risk. They allow you to apply new security policies back to the retroactively approved, grandfathered in apps. If you want to deprecate old protocols, if you want to get rid of old technologies, this is the way to do it. I was just in Europe recently, and I was looking at a bunch of castles, and state-of-the-art security used to be castles, right? You'd come over, you'd have your knights, they'd bang on the wall, but you were safe. And then we had cannons, which knocked that out. I argue this is the same thing for security. We need to have security checkups because eventually someone builds a cannon and blows away TLS 1.0. So at Salesforce, we do have that. We do have AppExchange re-reviews. We have a mature process for incident response. Being a big company with a very visible face, people will report security bugs that don't belong to you, but impact you, to you. We have a way to actually drive that remediation, even though it's not our code. We have ongoing security scans as new versions are launched, and new platforms act as triggers to help re-review old code. We launch new platforms all the time. some of you may have seen, we're launching a new developer platform, Lightning Web Components. I'm very excited about that. We're going to do a lot of security review around that too. But Prashanth, I talked about what to do.
Yep.
How do I make it good?
Yep. Let's make TTP review great again. Yeah, of course. Now we've built a process. Now there are a couple of challenges. You have cost and time. So by following some of these steps, you could drive down your cost and time too. One of these is analyzing your data to improve your process overall. I'll go over that in specifically. And then evangelizing your process, like Ryan said, you have a baseline that you have already set. Now you have to keep selling it to your third-party providers, both internally and externally. And automation saves a lot of time. I'll go over some open source tool that's available in the market. And then it's very important to have an operation team also to handle some of the requests. Over time, as the number of requests keeps climbing up, it would be very difficult for the engineering team to handle those requests. Yeah. So as I said earlier, storing, managing, and reviewing data on all the third-party application provide very valuable insight. Imagine you have review information for past 1 year. Then you could know that when there's likely spike, imagine there's a spike in the month of January or July, then you could likely request additional resources during that month, or you could assign contractors specifically for those months. And details on times to review and type of vulnerability are very helpful. What we realized over time was by looking at what type of application, what type of vulnerability, you could learn that, oh, okay, now I have Ruby on Rails. That's likely to have cross-site scripting. Oh, this is a PHP application. This is likely to have remote code execution. And then you could use that to train your internal security engineers on that information. And then you could also avoid a lot of deduplication. So after some time, what we did was we looked into some of our review data. So what we found was third-party endpoint developers can integrate with separate APIs. Now we realized that some of the developers used the same endpoints, and then it was reviewed by multiple engineers along the same timeline. So we were able to whitelist that internally. So we have so that if someone reviews an endpoint, and then after a certain time, when another developer, another external developer tries to use the same endpoint, the reviewer is made aware of it. We have certain cases also where people hash all the third-party JavaScript libraries and others, so they could compare that and see if the library has been previously reviewed by someone. Yes, evangelization and educating the entire process. So publish the document both internally and externally if you have internal third-party guideline for your internal developers. And for external cases like AppExchange, we keep on publishing it, and we sell it to our Salesforce Dreamforce event. And then also OWASP is a good way. We have some links to OWASP documentations. Document all good and bad examples. That's very helpful too. And bring education. Isn't that all OWASP is about? So we try to help our developers too. And then we also do weekly office hours for any developer, any third-party developer who wants to develop in our platform. They could schedule time with any of our engineers. We have each office hour is 30 minutes, and we have 6 office hours weekly. They come out, talk about false positives, and we verify architectures with them. And then, yeah, as I said, automation is very, very helpful. Security engineers have a natural tendency to automate. In the beginning, it might be manual, but as the number of requests starts coming in, it might become very difficult as you scale. Automation is very, very pivotal. So collect all this information into a unified system and staff it for less interesting stuff like metrics and operational support. And it's also helpful that you provide some self-service tool. So if you have third-party provider, tell them, okay, we require you to run OWASP scan, or we require you to run PMD scan and submit the report to us. So before the app even comes to you, they would know what their security status is, and then you could reduce some of the issues. And also, creating an operation team is very, very helpful. As I said earlier, as the number of requests keeps on increasing, it's very difficult. The cost of a security engineer and time of them is more valuable. So what we realized is, as we had an operation team, the number of requests that comes to our security engineer team reduces greatly. So some of the common responses they could handle. And internally, what we also do is we ask all the third-party providers to run scan and then submit the scan report to us. So the operation team will look into the scan report and ask for false positive or ask them to remediate it, and then only they'll push the submission to our team. If there's no operation team, then what will happen is their request will go back in the queue. By the time a security engineer looks at it, probably a week or 2 weeks from now, then you have a huge wait time, and then they might flag the same issue that's being flagged by an automation scanner. Now, these are some of the really good tools we use both internally, and we also recommend you to start using it. Vuln Report for security management, this is open source by Salesforce. We have Tim Bach here, who actually developed it, and it's a pretty helpful tool. It has metrics, and you can have all the review information. And then for source code analysis, Brakeman, Bandit are more language specific for Ruby and Python respectively. PMD is a good tool, but has like a lot of false positives. You can also look at vendors like Checkmarks, which is what we use internally, and it's very helpful. For dependency analysis, you can use OWASP dependency check, pretty good tool. For web app scanning, OWASP app, we require all our reviewers, if they are developing a web application, we ask them to submit OWASP app scan, and then we also use internally both Nikto and Nmap, very effective tools.
Just a quick note on this, we do not endorse any vendors here. Do not take that as something that we are blessing. These are just examples. Please find the best tool for the job.
Yeah. But we recommend any of the open source solutions. So now for question time.
There's going to be a microphone coming around the room, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. So I just got one question. As you require third-party developers to submit you some security reports or scanning report that is generated by whatever tools, how do you validate that it's really the report targeting the real application? Could I just make a fake application and run the scanner?
I mean,
it's going to be blank, right?
Yeah, so we've included the required documents as part of our baseline, but we still assess. You trust but verify. So it's great to get that ahead of time. The primary purpose of something like that for us is so that we can get those issues as far left in the process as possible. If you submit to us a really high vulnerability ZAP report, hopefully you've looked at the report you submitted us and have a reason that you've ignored everything. Or you've fixed everything, you've given us a clean report. If you submit us something that doesn't correspond with reality, that will be found out.
And also, we run the scan ourselves also. So we have a scan that we run from our side on their application they submitted.
Is it like automated, once the people submit, you scan it with your scanner, or you do it manually?
They submit one from their side, and we also scan from our side, and also goes through a manual review.
It depends, is the answer. Whether it's the code packages we ingest, those are automatically scanned. Yeah. Whether it's the third-party endpoints, we do a little more manual verification because we don't want to start auto-hacking the internet.
I see. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
I think this is a really great talk. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard about it, so that's pretty great. I think not everybody has an app store, but we all have vendors that we need to evaluate, and I think this technique applies. It's really great how you're allowing us as security people to say yes safely more often by working with the vendors and helping them get better. Can you say more about the checkup process? How do you keep that all organized and triggers that are not just time-based, but there's changes in the apps? How do you even know that that happens?
Yeah.
More about that.
So we've tried to keep this as broad as possible to cover vendors, to cover people who don't have source code. And that's kind of left this hard to answer. The answer really depends on what data you can automatically collect. At Salesforce, we ingest code packages. We can count lines of code. We can count number of files. We can count number of vulnerabilities from our own static analysis. That helps really drive risk. We can count installs. Frankly, what's important to your organization and how do you measure change? Because what you're building is a change management or a change detection engine in order to know when there's enough change to warrant new security review.
You could have time-based also. You could make use of Vuln report, and then you could have like a time-based one. Probably every 6 months you look into the review, or a year from now. We use code lines for the package case, but if you have external closed source vendors, you could have a time-based one.
Time-based, impact-based.
Yeah.
If you can collect automated metrics, change-based as well.
Yeah.
Did we answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you for the talk. It's very interesting. I'm curious, have you guys seen any corner cases? Like you have this process, some of it's automated, some of it's manual. There's some, third-party interaction. Has there been any like corner cases where somehow this process hasn't been enough to, catch ones and twosies? That makes sense.
So, yes. I can't speak to any specific instances of vulnerabilities that were missed by this process. It depends on how often you re-review and what the goal is. So at Salesforce, the goal isn't to provide a certification or attestation of security for every app on the App Store. That would be a ton of work. That would put us in a lot of interesting legal and ethical quandaries. We want to make sure that security is something that has been considered. We want to make sure that we have an ongoing commitment from this partner that we care about security, and that if something happens, we'll fix it together. We don't promise that, so it's not something that we track, but we do help drive incidents when they occur, if that answers your question.
Yes, basically it's not a destination, it's just getting the car pointed in the right direction and getting it moving.
Yeah. Security's never done. We're not going to find O days in Apache struts with this process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Going once? Going twice?
We'll also be available if you want to talk to us off the record.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.